Even though you're working in Revit, it's pretty common for you to need to access data that was created outside of Revit in other CAD files. So in this video, let's assume that I have a civil engineer that's working in AutoCAD and has sent me a DWG file of the site plan information, and I need to incorporate that information into my Revit project. So I'm going to switch views. I'll come over here on the project browser and go to my site plan view. And you can see that it comes in at a much smaller scale. And I want to give myself a little bit of room to work. So I'll just put my mouse kind of in the middle of the screen here and roll down a couple of clicks to zoom out. So to bring in a file created in another CAD program, we go to the Insert tab and we have two options. We have Link CAD here and we have Import CAD here. Now, generally speaking, Link CAD is considered the better choice. And one of the major advantages of Link CAD is that if the file that I'm linking gets updated, I can simply reload that link and capture any of the changes. So that tends to be a nicer workflow than having to completely re-import the data again. So let me go ahead and click Link CAD then, and I'll select the DWG file that was sent to me by my civil engineer. Now, let's talk about a few of the settings that occur down at the bottom of the dialog. The first of which is the files of type. Now, I'm bringing in a DWG, but notice that it supports many other formats as well, like MicroStation files or SketchUp files, so you can use the same basic method to bring in those files. Now, in the middle here, there are several different settings. CAD files are typically in color, so here you could either preserve those colors or force them all to black and white. I'll accept the default and preserve them. CAD files are typically organized into layers or levels. You can bring in all of those layers or some of those layers. I tend to bring in all of them, and then if there's a layer I don't want to see, I'll hide it later. CAD files can be created in any unit of measure. So if you know the unit of measure, you can choose it off the list here, or AutoDetect usually does a pretty good job. So I typically default to that, and then if I need to scale it later, we can look into that. Correct lines that are slightly off axis is a setting that will try to correct inaccuracies that have to do with really long decimal place values. Now that can work pretty well for smaller scale files like this particular file, but if you have a very, very large file, like a really detailed large site plan, you might actually want to turn this off because it might overcorrect things. I'll leave it turned on in this case. Now, current view only is a really interesting setting. If I were to check that, then that would mean that the CAD file would only show here in the site plan view that I have open in the background, in no other view in the file. If I uncheck it, then it will treat it like it's part of the model and it will show everywhere. So in other floor plans, 3D views, what have you. So I'm going to leave it unchecked and I'll show you what that looks like in a few moments. Now for positioning, if the two files have been coordinated with one another and share a common origin, then origin to origin can be a nice setting. These two files have not been coordinated. So the origin that's in the CAD file does not match the origin of the Revit file. Now you're welcome to try it and you'll see what I mean, and then you can just simply undo. But in this case, I'm going to choose the more generic option of center to center. Center to center is useful when you're not sure if the two files have been coordinated or you're pretty sure that they haven't, and you just want to make sure that the CAD file comes in on screen and you can find it easily. So it just lines up the center of the CAD file with the center of the Revit project, and when I click open, you'll see that it just sort of drops right into the screen. So clearly we now need to move this file because this site plan does not match the location of the building. So this blue dashed box right here represents the property line of the building. So I need that to coordinate a little bit better with my building geometry. So I can click anywhere on the CAD file and select it, go to the move command, start moving at some convenient start point. So I'll pick the lower left-hand corner of this property line here. And then initially I'm going to move that to the intersection of column grids A and 1. And then I'll click at that intersection. I'll zoom in a little bit. And I want to move it twice more. So it's still selected. I'll go back to move, pick any start point, start moving horizontally to the left and type in 10, press enter, move again, pick any start point, start moving straight down, type in 6 and press enter. And I've now moved it both to the left and down so that it is now positioned correctly relative to the building. So you can see that that setback line now goes all the way around the building geometry. So now I'm going to click anywhere to deselect the CAD file, and let's just kind of review the settings that we used to bring this in. For colors, we preserved the colors, and you can see very clearly that the information in the CAD file has come in color. We brought in all of the layers, and if you want to see those layers, you can select the CAD file, go to this query button here, and you can reach into the CAD file and touch the pieces of geometry. When you click on one of the items in the CAD file, you can see the layer that that object is on right here. Optionally, you can even hide that layer in the current view. So you may recall that I said if there's a layer I didn't want to see, then I typically hide it later. I can do that, and you can see that green dashed line down the middle of the road disappears. Now I'm still in the query tool, so I'll click the modify command to cancel out. We also made sure that current view only was not checked. So to show you that, I can click back over here on the level 1 tab and notice that the CAD file displays here as well. Had I checked current view only, it would only be visible in the site plan, but the fact that I can see it here in another view means that that was unchecked. And in fact, if I go to a different view, like my default 3D view, you can see it displays here as well. So it will display everywhere in all views. Now, notice that the green dashed line is still visible here. So even though the file is visible in all views, when you start hiding layers, that's a view by view change. So just wanted to make sure I pointed that out to you. Now, the final thing that we mentioned about this is we started with the Link CAD button. Now that was significant because if my civil engineer sends us an update, all we have to do is go to the Manage Links button right here, click on the CAD Formats tab, select the file, and reload it. And then we will capture any of the changes that have been made since the last time we loaded that file. So linking a CAD file can be a very convenient way for you to coordinate your efforts with folks that are working outside the firm or in other popular formats like AutoCAD. So anytime you need to do such coordinations, you can use the Link CAD functionality and create a hybrid project team that's using both Revit and CAD geometry.